Have you seen how much water they're floating in at 34 weeks? It's like not very much. They are not floating. And that's the time where their cranial bones can shift out of position, especially if their head is pressing up against your sacrum. It's pressing up against your pubic bone. And so if we can lift this baby up and over your pubic bone, they're more likely to have an ideal position and an ideal head shape for delivery.
Getting pregnant and giving birth are two of the most exciting things you can ever hope to experience in this life. The moment you think you could be pregnant, you're frantically searching for all the best information, which is why you're here today. I'm Stephanie King, and with my many years of experience as a professional childbirth educator, doula, and lover of all things pregnancy, birth, and postpartum, I'm here to make preparing for your birth enjoyable, empowering, and totally easy. Each week, I'll cover different topics, interview professionals, and get into the nitty-gritty birth stories from mamas just like you. And when you're ready for more, you can join me in the My Essential Birth course at myessentialbirth.com, where I take you step by step through exactly how to prepare your mind, body, spirit, and partner for a birth you love. So let's get started. Our reviewer of the week is Becky A. May, and she says, unmedicated birth of my dreams. Had the absolute best unmedicated birth experience with my first this past October, and it's a huge thanks to this podcast and the My Essential Birth course. I stumbled across this podcast early in my pregnancy and was immediately hooked. Listened to all the episodes and some more than once. Will forever be grateful to you, Steph, for teaching me all things pregnancy and birth and helping me believe in my baby and my body. Went into pregnancy nervous about birth, but ended up delivering a close to 9-pound baby girl completely unmedicated thanks to your teachings and guidance. I absolutely love that. And congratulations to you and your almost 9-pound baby. That is no simple feat, especially with a first baby, but you are paving the way literally for following babies and also for other moms. So thank you for being here and following along. With me today, I have Meaghan, who is the founder of Beames CST Training Center, offering tailored global learning for health professionals. Her mission is to ensure that every family in North America has access to qualified craniosacral therapists to help their babies cope with colic, latching issues, and all the growing pains that can make life with a newborn harder than it needs to be. So I'm really excited about today's interview and to have her here with me. I think it's a topic that is certainly not discussed enough. I think that we need a little bit more conversation around this for sure. So with that, Meaghan, will you take a moment, say hi to everybody, and talk a little bit about what you do? Because I know that some people have never heard of this before.
Hi, thank you. First of all, thank you so much for having me on your show. I'm really excited to talk about it because I agree, not enough people know about it. However, there's a huge movement of more people understanding that bodywork for babies and even for pregnancy and postpartum people it's becoming more known, it's becoming more popularized, and that to me is a wonderful thing. Because it's essentially, bringing people to the point of understanding that healing can start as soon as we're born. And so I'm Meaghan Beames. I'm a registered massage therapist. I am a craniosacral therapist. I do visceral manipulation. I do rhythmic movement. I work with babies, toddlers, children, teens, and adults using craniosacral, but also all of the other modalities. So I kind of just bring them all into one. And yes, I am the founder of Beames CST Training Center. So my mission is to increase the number of craniosacral therapists in North America and beyond, because I see the need. Because not only do I see the need, but there are families out there who are literally like begging for someone to be close to them, to be a craniosacral therapist, or to have a craniosacral therapist in their neighborhood, because their children are experiencing things like airway issues, right? Once they become toddlers and children. So airway issues, behavioral issues, and I know that if we can get them as an infant and see if we can help them with some of the structural changes that happen during birth and the birthing process, then we can help avoid some of these really troublesome things like a toddler who won't sleep. uh, so that's my mission, is to increase the number of infant craniosacral therapists so we can help, families to avoid these really difficult periods of life.
So will you tell me, maybe explain what a craniosacral therapist is and what you do?
Sure. So any health professional pretty much can introduce craniosacral therapy into their practice. So an SLP could be a physiotherapist, a registered massage therapist, even midwives, RNs. They can have craniosacral therapy as one of their modalities. And so craniosacral therapy itself is a hands-on healing modality where we very, very gently feel through the body for areas of tension or restriction. And then with that very same gentle pressure, we help release it. Some people might think, like, why would a baby need that? They have no tension. There's nothing that could possibly have happened for these babies to have tension in their body. And I would like to flip that and say they were either tried to squeeze through a hole smaller than themselves, like that 8.5-pound baby or almost 9-pound baby that you were speaking of at the beginning of the show. Or they tried and they were not successful. And so now they have to be brought out through the belly, and they also have some of their own issues. Or they were a preemie and that's really hard on their lungs and in their chest cavity. Or they were a multiple, right? Maybe there's lots of them in the womb and they are fighting for space and they're cramped up, and that can cause tension in the tissue. So a craniosacral therapist will feel through a baby's body or their cranium. It could be tension in their face. A lot of times it's tension in their face and between the bones of their face and their skull that can cause lots of issues like feeding struggles. It can cause things like excessive spitting up. It can cause things like side preference. So the babies who have plagiocephaly, or they turn their head one side to the other, that's a sign of tension. So these craniosacral therapists will feel through the body, see where that tension lies, help release it, and hopefully also give parents things like exercises or strengthening or stretching to help this baby to further and continue to loosen for optimal functioning.
So if this is something that, for example, a chiropractor could also do, so it's not instead of, what would be the difference? Because I know a lot of times we tell moms, if you can, get that newborn baby to a chiropractor early because it's such a great, tiny little adjustment, and they're so reactive to it because they haven't been out of whack for 10 years and now they're going to go get help, So how does it work with something, or how is it different than chiropractic care, and how can it work with it? And also, just as you're saying, we look for tension, what does that look like? Could you maybe, after you answer the first question, walk us through what that would look like?
Sure. So I'll answer the first one, and I'll say I'm not a chiro, so I can't speak to exactly what they do, and I won't do that because I don't know. And not all chiros are the same, right? Some have very specific peds training where they do very similar things to craniosacral, but it is taught through a chiro lens. So I've watched some videos of chiros doing their work, and I think, oh, that's very similar to what craniosacral therapists are doing. And then I've watched other chiros, and I'm like, that is very not much like what we're doing. So, and so the ones who are very different from the ones who are doing cranio-like treatments, their focus again is mainly on the spine. Again, I'm not speaking for every chiro, so please know that. But they might be focusing more on the spine and kind of forgetting about perhaps the abdomen and the tissues that could get tight within the abdomen. They might be focusing on maybe the jaw and the ears and the neck, and kind of missing the other integral bones that are out of place, which could be like the top of the head, the sides of the head, the back of the head. So again, it's not very, very different in that they are still using very gentle touch, but they might just be missing some integral parts. I would also say if you don't have a craniosacral therapist in your neighborhood, but you have a chiropractor who treats babies, then send them there. Absolutely. Absolutely. The other difference being, from what I have heard and what I am told, is that a chiro appointment is about 15 to 20 minutes, and a craniosacral appointment would be about 45 to 60 minutes. That being said, we will see that baby once a week, and with a chiro, they'll see them 2-3 times a week. So the difference is that we will spend a little bit more time in that one specific session, finding those areas, listening to the story, paying close attention to this baby. We are not rushed. We are not going very quickly through the session. Whereas a chiro, that's their model. That is their model of care. They do 15-minute appointments with everyone. They will even do that with babies. Again, I'm just going based on what I've been told and what I have experienced myself. And so in that 15 minutes, they might miss a lot. They might not be able to fully wait for a release to happen in that baby. Because sometimes we might be holding, as a craniosacral therapist, I have my hands kind of like scooped because I would hold the baby's head like this. We might hold the baby's head for 10 minutes to really wait and let that body to settle and release and relax. Whereas if we only had 15 minutes, we would rush through this appointment and miss things, or maybe send them home with an incomplete release, which then the babies sometimes, if they have an incomplete release, they might scream and cry all night long after their appointment. So we just give them a little bit more time, a little bit more presence, and when a baby feels safe, a lot more, and not rushed, they will also be able to release a little bit easier and a little bit better.
Okay, so walk us through an appointment. What would that look like?
Sure. So I know your previous question was also, what does tension look like and how do you release it? So I'll kind of like put that into the answer as well. So a session would be, especially for the initial appointment, we would get the birth story, pregnancy and birth story, because in those details usually lie where the tension, or usually tell us where the tension lies in the baby. Because pregnancy, how the baby lies in the womb, how the baby is born, will present as tension in different areas of their body. And not only that, but the emotional aspects will also be there in their body. So we're going to be able to feel through those, and those details might guide us in our session. So we like to know a lot of details. Was there a cord wrap? Did they use forceps of vacuum? Did they come out really, really fast? Did they have a nuchal hand? Were they cesarean? Did they not progress past 3 centimeters? Were they really high station? Were they breech? Were they transverse? Right? So all of these very specific details will direct us to different areas of the body. So we'll listen to that. But not only do we listen to these stories to understand where the tension lies in the baby, but where the tension lies in their parent. Because if their parent is still very traumatized by their own experience, that will project onto the baby. And that also is the experience of the baby. So we like to understand the emotional aspects of birth and how it was for them. And in just the telling of the story could be very healing. So we give space, we give time, and we are a neutral ear. We are not going to shame, judge, or speculate. And that is very healing for a lot of people. So we'll listen to that, and then what we'll do is we'll feel through the body, and feel for tension. So tension can look like a side preference, or it could look like their legs are always like tucked up, right? So when people are like, oh, I can't get their sleeper on, I can't straighten their leg, that is tension. Or when they're like, I can't get their sleeper over their elbow because their arms are always tucked and their shoulders are always shrugged, that is tension. Or when they're in the bassinet, they only turn their head to the left. That is tension. Or when they yawn and they cry a little bit, that is tension. So tension presents like usually a lack of movement. And a lot of people are like, well, they're babies. They'll just work it out. However, not always. Sometimes they need that help to work out the tension. And that's what craniosacral therapists do. So we feel that tension and we very, very gently, and it's more like encouraging the tissue to release rather than saying it's time for you to release. Like, you go to a massage and someone's like, oh yeah, deep pressure, then I'm going to let go. It's the opposite. We work with fascia. So we work with this tissue that is contractile, but it is also reactive. So if it feels like it's under stress, under tension, under duress, under pressure, all of those things, it will tighten. But if it feels like it's safe, it will relax. So that's where the cranio comes in, where we very, very subtly, very gently help release that tension. And so I was saying before, we might hold a baby's head for 10 minutes and just do the exact same position for 10 minutes. But that's what this body is telling us it needs. That's what this neck is saying. I had 30 hours of Pitocin, I had 30 hours of Pitocin and then a vacuum. And so we can't be like, oh, okay, well, let me take 30 seconds to help you release that neck of yours. It's like it might need 10 minutes of us saying, you're safe, you can let go. You're safe, you can let go. So we won't just hold one spot. We might go to their abdomen. We might do some releases around their belly button. We could hold their hips and kind of do some mobility testing as well. So like, does this hip move better than this hip? Does one leg bend better than the other? And so it's not just subtle movements. We do some larger movements as well. And then we could even do some stretching in that, in the appointment as well. So gently release and then a stretch. And we could have our hands everywhere or anywhere. It could be the toes. It could be the ankles, knees, hips, abdomen, rib cage, shoulders, neck, and head. So when people hear the word cranio, they think it's got to be just the head. But it's the head is just 10% of what we work on.
That's super interesting. So when you're saying you help them release tension, and you were kind of talking about some of the things that you say, how does that work?
How do we release the tension?
Uh-huh.
So fascia, again, is a contractile tissue, just like muscles. But muscles relax voluntarily, meaning you can say, okay, I don't need to hold my bicep tensed up now. I can release it. I can relax it. Fascia is the opposite in that it contracts, but it does not release volitionally. So or voluntarily. It contracts to protect. That is its job. It has many jobs, but one of its jobs is to protect. And so if you don't know what fascia is, it is the tissue that surrounds each muscle, each organ. It surrounds and envelops the nerves. It surrounds and envelops the bones, like everything. So it's everywhere, and it protects us everywhere. The other thing is that fascia runs in lines up and down the body. So it is the tissue that connects your knees to your hips, to your head, right? So head, shoulders, knees, and toes. It is, it is the thing that connects everything. So it also has an effect on everything. And so if your knees are tight, so too are your hips. If your hips are tight, so too is your mouth. So what we'll do is, again, we will have our hands very gently where we are feeling the tension. It could be the hips, could be the head, wherever we're feeling it in that moment. We'll hold our hands there, and we can feel very subtle changes. So the changes in the tissue could be a millimeter at a time. It could feel like softening. It could feel like twitching. It could feel like jerking movements, especially for babies. It could feel like clicking and popping, but we as craniosacral therapists have to be very quiet, very still to be able to feel these subtle changes and these subtle shifts. So that's why when you watch craniosacral, it might look like the person is doing nothing. It really does. It looks like, oh, you're just holding a baby and looking at them lovingly. But what we are doing is we're almost like in another dimension. We are sitting with that tissue and pretending like we can see it with our X-ray vision, and really subtly tuning into the shifts and changes that are happening. And that requires being very still and quiet.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I think I've shared this on the podcast before. I've talked once about craniosacral therapy, but when I took my doula training, we had a craniosacral therapist come in, and she asked, does anybody want to volunteer to be up here? And one of the girls went up, and she's like, just stand. And one of her shoulders was higher than the other. And so she just put her hands on her. And we're just watching, And anyways, she's like, just be still and be calm, and whatever she's doing, barely touching her. Anyway, she gets done, and she was up there for maybe 5 minutes while she's just talking to us and just sitting there being calm. And she gets done and her shoulders were level. And we were like, what just happened? And so the lady leaves, and the girl that went up there was like, I thought that woman was a complete quack, but I kid you not, as she was touching me, I felt something like release from my shoulder and leave out my arm. And we were like, what? And so, of course, we all got her number and we're like, when can we meet with you? But it was so interesting to watch, because it's no joke, like you were saying, watching somebody do this and you're like, yeah, sure. But then to watch like full, like we all saw it, it wasn't a magic trick. And that the girl that went up was like, I don't believe in this at all. So it was so interesting. So I'm like asking you these questions because I'm curious myself. And I know moms are going to want to know, like, what are you doing? Like, how does it work? Because it's super interesting. But yeah, it's just it's a neat modality. I do not understand it. I will be completely clear about that, but I love that it exists, and it has benefits, obviously. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think there's something very unknown about it. And yet there's a lot of scientific, science backing it up. So even me, I've been doing this for how long? 7 years. And I'm still like, what am I doing?
Why does this work so well?
How did that happen? I am amazed.
Well, that's the part where it's like chiropractic. You're like, okay, it makes sense. These bones go here, and we're clicking, and like, yes, of course, I understand. But then we hit this other side of things where you're like, you talk about modalities and connecting with people and all of that. And it's different. And I put it even on the like doula train of thought, because we connect with people in this space. Yes, there are physical things that we do to help moms be more comfortable, but a lot of what happens for them is what we call holding space. And you cannot see and touch that. But it works, and it is huge. There's a whole other layer of things that happen to us within our bodies and within our conscious that kind of live on this other plane. So it's really interesting.
So I love that you say holding space, because tissue is very often tissue, they have found different areas of our body can actually store memory.
Yes.
And fascia can store memory. They have found memory cells, I believe, in the liver. And so fascia can store memory. And a lot of times fascia is forgotten, or the body is forgotten in this holding space. So it's almost like craniosacral is the way of holding physical space for physical tissue. And it's I believe it's The Body Keeps the Score, where it talks about you can have talk therapy for your entire life. But if you do not touch the areas of your body in a safe manner while trying to process the events that are stored in this area, then that memory and those experiences will stay there. So we as craniosacral therapists, we don't get your life story unless you're a baby.
Right.
And then we really truly do get your life story. But for an adult, we don't get your life story. All we get is feeling of tension. So we'll go to that area of tension, and we don't even need to know what happened to you to create this tension, we just need to know that we need to be there and we need to support it and tell this area that it is safe to let go. And so that is where the healing is. The other thing is with this healing modality is that we don't have to know your trauma for you to be, and you don't have to even be pulled back into your trauma to be able to release and process this experience.
That's super interesting.
Yeah. And so that is where craniosacral is a beautiful modality because we don't have to re-traumatize, but we can still help you heal.
So how would moms know after having a baby, like should every baby be seen by a
Yes.
craniosacral therapist? Yes. And say that they're hearing this and their baby's a little bit older, like at what age and stage is it appropriate? And are there signs that even like professionals that are listening, like maybe not every parent can afford it. However, maybe there's some signs that like, yes, but if you're having this issue, then it really makes sense to reach out to somebody.
Yeah. So I think I mentioned it earlier on at the very beginning. So signs for babies that they should probably see a craniosacral therapist or get body work. I'm just the type of person who's like, great, if cranio is a thing and that is what's close, please, amazing. But if it's not close and all you have, quote unquote, is cranio is chiro or osteo or physio or whatever, get this baby, touch the baby in a healing way. Yeah. And so babies who need body work are ones who are not sleeping well, meaning that they are waking every 45 minutes or they are waking every 15 minutes for naps. There's something going on. So every 45 minutes to an hour and a half in the middle of the night, there is something something to do with their airways that's making them not be able to get into a nice deep sleep. Other signs would be they're excessively spitting up or they are not gaining weight well. What's going on there? Is that a functional issue? Is that a digestive issue? Or is that a low milk supply issue? So we want to help with those things. Also for babies, if they had a traumatic birth experience, we can't tell whether they had a traumatic birth experience or not. Being born is traumatic for babies. So that's why I say every baby should have body work. But significantly traumatic, absolutely. That should be something that happens within the first week. They should be getting body work. Babies who don't latch very well, they're uncoordinated or it's pinchy or there's pain, there's cracking within the first day or two. Parents are told, oh, that's normal, especially for a first baby. No. There's something going on there. Let's see what's happening with that mouth and that jaw and that head shape. And some other things would be they only turn their head to one side. Perhaps they sound like they're really snorty or they're always congested. That's tension in the face. And that later on could create airway issues, crowded teeth. That could create seasonal allergies and those things also create sleep issues. So mouth breathing, which then, mouth breathing when they're asleep or sleeping through the night, that creates cavities. And so we want to get them as babies so we can avoid those things. That's what I was kind of mentioning at the beginning of the show. And then, so if we don't get those things as babies, usually, right? So colic, people are like, oh, they're colicky, they'll grow out of it. Well, what if they're 18 months and they're still screaming their head off all the time, right? What's going on there? And if they started screaming at 3 months and the parents are told they'll grow out of it, well, what happens for those next 15 months? That's a really tough position to put a parent in. And that's really hard for the child as well. And like I said, it could these types of things could present as airway issues, crowded teeth, that type of thing. But it could also be digestive. So a baby that doesn't poop every day usually becomes a toddler who doesn't poop every day, usually becomes a toddler or child who is hard to potty train, or they withhold. They don't want to let it out or because it hurts them to poop. And then we've got that type of an issue. So getting their digestive tract and their digestive system working well as an infant and toddler, that might help with the potty training as well. So there's lots of things, really, lots and lots of things that that we can help with.
That's awesome. How about for moms? How about pregnant moms? Is this something that, how does that work when you have another life inside of you?
Yeah, great question. So that person that you said who had the uneven shoulders, she probably also had some uneven hips, right? And so when you have uneven hips, you also have perhaps a uterus that kind of goes off to one side. And then because your uterus might go off to one side, so too does the baby. And then it's almost like a vicious cycle. So we have uneven hips, now the baby has uneven hips because they grew in an uneven environment. Now, that's not to say that we are looking for like ultimate symmetry. We are looking for the ability for both sides to move as easily as the other. So symmetry in movement rather than symmetry in like the whole body, because we are not symmetrical side to side. So what I say is even before your second trimester, when your baby starts taking up more room in your uterus and your uterus is getting bigger and bigger, seeing someone to help with your pelvis. And so chiro is okay as long as they are addressing the soft tissue, meaning as long as they are addressing things, not just the spine alignment, but they're doing soft tissue of the abdomen, they're doing soft tissue of the thighs and into the knees, because that, again, that fascia has a direct effect on the hips. So, if people are going in to get cranio in their first, second trimester, that might help set them up to have this baby in a really great position for labor and vaginal delivery, if that's what they're really hoping for. And going a couple of sessions, not just one or two, but perhaps once every 6 weeks in starting early pregnancy would be ideal, really.
Are there things that moms can do at home? Like, are there things that you send your moms home with? Like, they see you for craniosacral and then you give them some homework or things that they can do at home?
So for me, it's movement. Because the more movement you do, the more likely your hips will be able to adjust and spread and make space as your baby descends through the canal. And so those movements is on a ball, like a yoga ball, getting them to sway back and forth, front and back. But then for me, it's incredibly important to know what the positioning of the sacrum is. So are they sitting with their hunched over? That's going to put an posterior rotation of the sacrum. And that's going to get the baby to kind of swing and maybe be in an occiput posterior position. So getting them to have a further arch forward, getting their belly up and over their pubic bone, will help get this baby up and over the pubic bone and less likely to be an occiput posterior, a little bit more likely to be in an occiput anterior, which is ideal for a vaginal delivery.
So don't be sitting in your chairs, leaning back against them with your back curved. Don't do
No.
Got it.
Yes, you're for me, I love the position of like man spreading. And just like letting your belly hang. It's okay. And not completely letting your belly hang, because then you put a lot of pressure on the abdomen and the tissue of your abdomen, and you might be a little bit more likely to get the separation of your abdomen. So, man spreading, having that belly between your legs, but also using perhaps a belt to help support the weight. And that belt will also lift the baby off of the pubic bone as well, so that they have less pressure on their head against a bone. So we also have to think about the positioning of this baby. How much time are they spending up against your bones? A lot of people are like, oh, well, they're floating in water. Have you seen how much water they're floating in at 34 weeks? It's like not very much. They are not floating. And that's the time where their cranial bones can shift out of position, especially if their head is pressing up against your sacrum. It's pressing up against your pubic bone. And so if we can lift this baby up and over your pubic bone, they're more likely to have an ideal position and an ideal head shape for delivery. There are lots of things that could get in the way, like an anterior placenta or a nuchal cord or something like that, or even being in breech position. But this is, again, not a guarantee, but helping to bring them into that ideal position.
So with like an exercise ball or a yoga ball or something like that, and I'm always saying, if you can, use that to sit at your computer. Use that
Yes.
to, because it puts everything in a better alignment. So spending some time on there. Are there any particular motions or exercises that you have them do on there? Do you have them doing like pelvic tilts or figure eights, or what does that look like?
So yes, pelvic tilts, and then like making sure that they are ending on an anterior pelvic tilt. Figure eights is great, but I say don't get too deep. We actually don't want the baby to descend too far into the pelvis. So we don't want to open it up too much, because if you open up your pelvis too much, late in third trimester, you kind of get a baby with early engagement, and early engagement equals baby's head pressed up against bones. So we don't want to do too many crazy eights, because that opens up, unless you're like, I am 40 weeks and I would like to go into labor. So third trimester, keep it with pelvic tilts and inversions. So being on hands and knees and kind of like just letting your belly hang. Again, to get this baby into an optimal position. What it does is it also takes a lot of the pressure off of this baby's head. So let's say this baby's head is kind of off to one side, so they are asynclitic. Once you kind of hang and dangle them, they might actually be able to get out of that asynclitic position and take some of that pressure off of their neck. That and who knows how long they've been asynclitic for. That tension starts in utero, and it can start for weeks before they are even born. So that tension, that's why I'm saying we could sit with the baby's neck for like 10 minutes, just waiting for that to loosen, because that tension starts early. So yeah, letting that belly hang. And inversions. So not everyone can do inversions. I tried when I was pregnant. I was like, I am way too heavy and way too weak for this. So the type of inversions would be, I believe it's called the dolphin. So it's not a full inversion. It's not a full, standing on your head type deal, but your knees, so you're on your knees, and then you have your hands kind of like a triangle over your head, and then you're bent over, and the pressure is on your forearms. So that is a really gentle inversion, and it's just enough to get that baby up and over the pubic bone. So I'll give that to them. The other one that I give is breathing. Breathing exercises, because labor requires a lot of oxygen. And if you're holding your breath and you don't know how to breathe optimally to increase oxygen, but also get out as much carbon dioxide as possible, then labor can be kind of difficult. So I'll give them breathing exercises as well.
I love it. That's awesome. Yeah. So it's not just like come and see you and then you're done. It's how can we take care of you throughout your pregnancy and postpartum. So that's awesome.
And the other thing I want to say is also about getting people who are pregnant and coming close to time of delivery is that we can help with oxytocin production. And oxytocin production has a huge effect on contractions and how well how strong your contractions are, as well as oxytocin production. So it's, we want to be able to produce it. And so if you've got tension between your eyes, maybe you don't produce very much oxytocin, or you want to optimize your oxytocin production. We can actually get to that gland that produces oxytocin. And I have actually heard of a story where the craniosacral therapist was called into a labor that was stalled. And the woman was like, I do not want Pitocin. I don't want Pitocin. So what can we do? So the craniosacral therapist did, I'm using my thumbs because this is the motion that we would do with the bone. She did some sphenoid work to help with oxytocin production, and the baby, like the contractions started to increase because this person felt safe. But also they got more of the hormone that really actually strengthens contractions. So
that's so
pretty
neat.
cool. Yeah, pretty cool.
So have a doula and a craniosacral on call.
Yeah. Or a doula who does craniosacral. Exactly.
Oh, the golden ticket. That's perfect.
Mhm.
Well, Meaghan, this has been so fun. Thank you for being here with me today and for all your amazing information. Will you let people know how and where they can connect with you?
Absolutely. So we are on Facebook and Instagram, mostly Instagram. I think it's just kind of one of those like quick clicks, post to Instagram, it'll go to Facebook. But it's Beames CST, BEAMES CST for both of those, Instagram, Facebook. We're not on the TikTok, but but I also have my own podcast, if you don't mind me sharing. It's called the My Baby Craniosacral podcast. And that's where I talk about what craniosacral is like for the person who is actually doing craniosacral. So if anyone's interested in learning more about what it would be like for them to actually do it, they can go there. My Baby Craniosacral.
Awesome. And I will make sure to include all that in the show notes, and you guys will get links in your emails this week as well. So thank you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
If you loved what you heard today, the very best way to support this podcast and help other moms to find it is to leave a quick review. I read one at the beginning of the episodes, and I would love for yours to be next. And if you're ready for even more pregnancy, birth, and postpartum goodness, come join me in the My Essential Birth course at myessentialbirth.com, where I will hold your hand and walk you through pregnancy and birth step by step so you're totally prepared for a birth you'll love. See you next week.